I just want to do God's will.
The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You are the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Welcome to Life Today Live. Well, the presidential race just got a lot more interesting over the weekend, and we don't know actually who will be on the Democrat side yet, just because Kamala Harris has not secured the delegates. So we'll be watching that over the next month. But whoever ends up being the nominee on the other side, it's going to be Trump and a Democrat, and that will impact obviously policy here in the United States. It'll also impact policy around the world, and there's a lot going on around the world in case you haven't noticed. In fact, last Friday, July 19th, 2024, if you're watching this later, the Iranian-backed Houthis got through the Israeli air defense, and they hit Tel Aviv with a bomb. It was 330 feet from a U.S. Embassy branch office. So 330 feet from a United States outpost being hit by an Iranian proxy. Well, we also have hostages still, American hostages that have not been returned after the Hamas raid last fall. Israel is obviously something we should pay attention to. And beyond that, there's ongoing issues. And here in the United States, we've seen Hamas marches, pro-Palestinian marches, anti-Israeli marches. Anti-Semitism is up in the United States. This is an issue, whether you are concerned about world issues or you're just looking domestically. It's in our own backyard. What do we do with that? Well, a friend and a guy that I respect a lot has just released a book. We're going to tell you how you can get it free. It's called Should Christians Support Israel? And it's written by Dr. Jeff Myers, who is the president of Summit Ministries, and he deals with a lot of young people. And this is an issue where I think there's a lot of misinformation, really not a lot of good education, and not a good worldview that is popular among younger people right now. And we're gonna talk about that. Jeff, good to see you, man. Great to have you back on Life Today Live.
Yeah, man, great to see you as well.
So, obviously, this is something you're having to deal with. Is this just coming up amongst the young people a lot with you?
Well, what we're finding is young adults today in the United States of America have become the most anti-Semitic generation for at least 4 generations. And it shocked me when I first looked at this back after the October 7th attacks. I started following some of the polls. And Gen Z young adults were trending more and more anti-Semitic with every poll. Harvard University's poll said 51% of them believed that Hamas's actions against Israel were justified because of Palestinian grievances. And that percentage went up to 60% by December. So I addressed it. I wrote a Daily Wire op-ed called Congratulations, America, You've Raised a Generation of Terrorist Sympathizers, which got a little bit of attention. and after that, I realized I needed to go there. I needed to be there in person. So I went and spent some time in the war zone with people from the IDF, intelligence officers, priests, rabbis, people from the left, the right, secular, religious, Arab, Jewish, all the way across the spectrum to try to figure out what was going on and bring that word back so that we can really rescue Gen Z from indoctrination. But in the process, I realized it isn't just Gen Z. America is very confused, and evangelicals in particular.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that. But I kind of laughed when you use the phrase terrorist sympathizers. But I don't know how you can study the situation there, knowing the situation of Israel, in that it's there's plenty of Arabs that live in Israel peacefully. Not a lot of Jews that live in the Arab nations peacefully outside of that. And I think it was Dennis Prager that said if you disarm Hamas and Hezbollah and now the Houthis, you would have peace in the Middle East. But if you disarm the Israelis, you'll have a Holocaust, you'll have genocide. What did you see when you went around the different areas talking to different people?
I first of all found a gratefulness that Americans were paying attention, that we were there. The people we were with told us that we were the first Christian group that had gone there to try to figure out what was going on and try to understand how to support our Jewish brothers and sisters, as well as support the nation of Israel. And I also found, I think, Randy, as we went through this, that there's a tremendous amount of resilience in Israel, that they are constantly under attack. At one point, I counted up 8 different war fronts that Israel is facing at every moment. And the Houthis, I guess, would maybe even make that more, because now they've figured out how to arm their missiles and shoot them all the way from the Red Sea into Israel. And, being able to hit Tel Aviv for this Houthi rebel group, these are tribal, very basically educated people who are doing all of this shooting. They're like Somalis. They essentially have no government. And so the fact that they have weapons that can shoot that accurately tells you that Iran is behind it. And that means something more. Okay, so the Iranians are a kind of Muslim called Shiite. Shia Muslims believe that the best leader of Islam is going to be a direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. They anticipate the coming of the 12th Imam, Muhammad al-Mahdi, and they believe that the only thing that is preventing that 12th Imam from coming back and ruling the entire world under an Islamic caliphate, the only thing preventing that is the existence of the State of Israel. So they're going to do everything they can, including working with Sunni Muslims who they hate, in order to try to achieve that goal.
Interesting, because it involves sort of an Islamic eschatology. And
Yes.
you mentioned evangelicals, and a lot of the views from Christians in America is centered around eschatology, much of which I disagree with, even though I support Israel 100%. When you mentioned evangelicals, is that what you were alluding to?
That is what I was alluding to. So we have a lot of differences in the church theologically. You and I've talked about this, and it's a very vibrant discussion. I was telling my wife Stephanie, I said, when I get on there with Randy, I don't know how this is going to go, because we see eye to eye on 90% of things, but the 10%, that's important. And that you can still be friends and have disagreements, I think, is really significant. That should tell evangelicals something about how we should engage on this issue.
Absolutely.
But the theology of it, I think is fairly straightforward. The founding of the nation of Israel in 1948 was the refounding of a continuous nation, in my view, that goes back 3,500 years. I say that for a lot of reasons, and I talk about that in the book, Should Christians Support Israel? Israel is the only nation that has ever formed a nation state in that region. They're the only ones who've ever had Jerusalem as their capital in all of history. So now we have to look at this theologically and think, well, for most of Christian history, people were used to talk about Israel as a spiritual concept, because it didn't have a physical existence. All of its people have been destroyed or scattered throughout the world. Now we're looking at this in a little bit of a different way, and people are trying to process it with all the different eschatological views that are out there at the present time. I think maybe if we go back to the idea of covenant in the Old Testament, we can kind of put a thread through this that we can all sort of agree on. That is, Israel was formed through the Abrahamic covenant. That was essentially God making a covenant with himself on behalf of Abraham, that the people in the land would be his people. And it's always the people in the land, the people in the land, the people in the land. Now, I grew up kind of, as a Presbyterian kid, amillennialism was the main thing that was taught. I never thought about the idea of in the land. I hadn't thought about the land as central to what God is doing in the world. But when I went back and looked at the Old Testament, I realized, man, that's what it says. It says it's in the land. In fact, the land is so important to it that at one point God says, if you disobey me, the land itself will vomit you out. I mean, that's how central the land is to the covenant. And then you have today, I think, the Apostle Paul, Galatians chapter 3, said, those who believe in Jesus are blessed along with Abraham, the man of faith. So I think there's a strong, clear line that goes from the Old Testament, from Jews to Christians, and includes both. How that works spiritually, theologically, evangelically, don't really know. I'm trying to find a way that we can get generalized support behind Israel and generalized support against Hamas at a time like this.
So help me, because I know we had a lot of discussions when we were together a couple years ago, and I was mainly arguing with Ken Harrison about this. but do you hold to a dispensational view still?
No, that's not where I'm going to dominantly focus at this time. But I'm not debating about it.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to make a premillennial or an amillennial or a postmillennial case. I will say this: I do believe that there are prophecies that were fulfilled in Jesus. That there are prophecies being fulfilled at the present time, and then there are other prophecies like Revelation 21, the coming of the new heavens and the new earth, that I believe have yet to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
At least I haven't seen in my own little mind evidence that they've been fulfilled. And so that gives you prophecy, past, present, and future. That how we deal with that with a different millennial view, it's very difficult for me to try to figure out. But I'll tell you what, I will say this: I do think that the attacks against Israel are ultimately about the United States as the main representation of Judeo-Christian civilization. That's what they're about. That Israel is not the ultimate enemy here, the United States is. And that brings together leftist progressive and Islamists.
Yeah. No, well, and then of course what you pointed out earlier is that Israel stands in the way of some of the Islamic goals, some of which do have to do with their own prophecy. And so I'd ask this dispensational question because, here's the thing. I disagree with that view. The Christians who say we should support Israel because they need to repossess the land, rebuild the temple, reinstitute sacrifices. So I disagree with all that. But that doesn't matter in the geopolitical discussion that we're having as far as should we support Israel just as Christians, as Americans, because Israel is the only functional democracy in the Middle East. They're our strongest allies. They're the only country where you can be from any background and live there. And so to me, they're in the right, not because of my view of unfulfilled prophecy, because I do believe it's been fulfilled, but in the view of world stability. Even though, because I mean, right now, as you know, Israel is not exactly like what we would call a moral country. The rates of homosexuality are very high. Most of them reject Christ as the Messiah. So, I mean, on religious lines, we're really not going to see eye to eye. But from a strategic geopolitical standpoint, and just who's right? Who's out there attacking other countries? Who's out there killing people? It's not Israel. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, however you get there, we get to the same point, which is we should support Israel. How you get there, in a sense, I mean, it matters, but it doesn't matter. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I completely understand that. And I'm uncomfortable when people say, I want Israel to be reestablished because then all of the Jews in the world will go there and then they'll all get killed.
2/3 of them.
And,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I just wish that we could approach it the way you're talking about right now. That said, this is, I believe, a theopolitical issue, not just a geopolitical issue. There are competing worldviews that are at play. Israel's a young nation. It's fairly secular. It's divided. There's a really strong growing religious movement there among Orthodox Jews. A lot of almost a revivalist mentality taking place right now. Messianic Judaism, people who believe that Jesus is the Messiah, that has grown substantially in Israel. I mean, by many multiples with every decade that passes. And then we also see but see, this is also where another theological question arises. Are you part of God's covenant because of your obedience or because he chose you? And I know we have to be obedient to what God says. We should be bearing the fruit of the Holy Spirit, but the covenant of God is from God. He's the one who decides it, and the attacks on Jewish people today are not based on whether those people are religious. That's not really even the issue. Jews were slaughtered on October 7th, secular or religious. The attackers did not care. During the Holocaust, Hitler's minions, same thing.
Yeah.
They were attacked because they were a people, not because they were particularly religious.
Fair point. Fair point. And I would say that the covenant is because of Christ, not because of my works and not because of an old covenant, but a new and better covenant. But so here's a lot of what you're dealing with now, and what we're seeing in the streets of our own country it's really a Marxist viewpoint of oppressor and oppressed, and people would say, the people in Gaza are oppressed by Israel because Israel has more power. But when I look at freeing Gaza or any of those areas, I say free them from their oppressors, which is not Israel. It's it's Hamas in this case, or Hezbollah, all tracing back to Iran. So I mean, and I believe from a Christian worldview, you want all Arabs to come to Christ. I want all Jews to come to Christ. We want to help those who are in need. And, as difficult logistically as it is to help in those areas, if not impossible, U.S. military couldn't even build a pier to deliver humanitarian relief, Ultimately, I think getting rid of the oppressors should be the goal, which is what Israel's doing. Do you see that thread going through this?
Absolutely. I think we need to understand Hamas, what they're all about, what they say about themselves, what their aims are, and what they've actually done.
Yeah.
Everything is translated into English. Everything. Every comment they've made, every social media post, every interview. Americans sometimes think that if somebody has something important to say, they'll say it in English. But, Hamas doesn't say it in English. They say it in Arabic. And very good translators have been translating this and telling us what's going on. If we're surprised by it, it's because we are remaining ignorant, not because the information is unavailable to us. So, yes, Hamas has to be destroyed. It's the enemy of the Palestinian people and the enemy of Israel. Mm-hmm. It's the enemy of peace in that entire region, honestly. Yep. If Israel stepped out of the middle, Hamas and the Palestinian Authority would be engaged in a bloody civil war. And Hamas would probably win because the Palestinian Authority has just put up with so much corruption for so many years that they don't even really have the base support that Hamas has anymore. This whole thing is super confusing. Anyway, that's why I wrote the book, because I thought I need to clear up some misconceptions, give the facts, show the actual historical basis of Israel, talk about the facts of why Israel is fighting so hard, why this is, in fact, a just war, even address the issues of genocide and proportionality that my students are dealing with. I've spent a lot of time in Q&A with students this summer on this topic. About 1,000 young people have come to Q&A sessions where they just get to ask whatever question they want. And trust me, there's no question you can ask that will be harder than the ones that they have been asking me all summer. I've done media interviews, and one guy apologized. He said, "Man, I'm sorry, my questions are so hard. I just, I want to be a good journalist." I said, "Oh, listen, I've spent the entire summer with 16 to 22-year-olds. Believe me, your questions are not hard." Their questions are hard. They're very hard. But you've mentioned the oppressor versus oppressed mindset, and I wanted to go back to that for a minute. That's sort of a neo-Marxist viewpoint. Mm-hmm. It isn't just the owners of the means of production versus the workers anymore. It's always the group viewed as the oppressor group versus the oppressed. Mm-hmm. So rhetorically, all the professors have to do is say, this is the oppressor group, and here's why we say that. Usually it has to do with money. Okay, they're richer, right? So those are the oppressors, and then any means to take them down is justified.
Right.
That's what young adults have been taught. Now, if you take that and you put that into the context, I was talking with the students last Thursday just about this. I said, you've been raised all of your lives to oppose bullying. You're supposed to stand up for the underdog, right? Your parents have taught you that every day of your life. And they said, yes, we've been taught that every day of our lives. So they take that idea, well, we need to stand up against the bullies. Then they mix it together with this neo-Marxist viewpoint that they've been indoctrinated with in their schools for years. And it seems obvious to them that you would oppose Israel. They can't even imagine that you would have it any other way. So this book has been the first time many of them have ever even considered the possibility that their simplistic little framework for the world might be wrong.
Well, and it's clear who the bullies are, and it's not Israel.
Right.
It's
Right.
it's Hamas. You just look at the way on October 7th what they did, the horror. I mean, and they were kids, many of them the age of the kids that you're dealing with. A lot of them at a music festival, and they go in and they kill them, they capture them, they rape them. I mean, if nothing. I almost think if that doesn't open the eyes of people here and around the world, I almost wonder what will. I mean, the horror's there. I mean, you've probably seen the presentation that they were doing where they were showing a lot of the footage that has not been – they're showing to journalists, the footage that they're not necessarily seeing on television. And I don't know that I've seen anything that horrific on a like that since maybe Rwanda.
I've seen a lot of footage. I've seen a lot of CCTV footage from little towns in Israel like Sderot. It's horrifying. You can't even imagine it. And it isn't just murder. It isn't just fighting, taking down your enemy, then moving on to the next enemy. One of the IDF officers put it this way. He said they didn't want to just kill us. They wanted to unholy us. They wanted to actually mutilate the bodies to the point where they believed, based on their understanding of Jewish teachings, that person's soul would never be at rest for all of eternity. They knew what they were doing. There are a number of facts about the situation, including sexual assault, that I don't feel comfortable talking about on a show,
Right.
but I did put the information in the book. Now, I do warn people in the book, if you might be triggered by descriptions of sexual assault, then you should skip this section. But other people really need to read it and consider the reality that Hamas never intended to have a just war in this situation. They never intended to do anything just. They want to bring about the annihilation of the state of Israel, even if it costs the lives of every single Gazan to make it happen. They've been super clear about that in their media interviews.
That's a strong point. And okay, so you guys watching out there, I'm going to put this in the this URL in the chat, but I don't have it on the screen. I've got summit.org. You can pick up this book if you go to summit.org/Israel. Jeff will send this to you free, and I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you, Jeff. Why would you pay to send a book out to people for free?
Well, I've got some financial partners who we had a mutual interest in getting the word out. We want to make friends with people. We want people to know about the work of Summit Ministries and send young adults to us to be trained in a biblical worldview. And frankly, I'm hoping that people will read the book and say, I can think of 20 people who need to see this book right now.
Yeah.
And then they'll reach back out and, pitch in a little bit for shipping and handling, get a case of books and distribute them to their church and to their friends. We have to get the word out. Nobody else out there is going to help us get Gen Z unindoctrinated from the propaganda that Hamas has given them and the leftist progressives are giving them. It's up to us to do this. So that's why I want people to go to summit.org/Israel, get that book. And then if you think it's worthwhile, then just come back, get some more, pitch in whatever you can. I don't even care. But it's really significant that we get the truth out. We cannot move forward as a nation if we have an entire generation that is so indoctrinated that they would prefer an apocalyptic rape and death cult to the values of the United States of America.
Yeah, and that seeing some of the things on our streets has been very disturbing personally, and I think the open border has played a part in that because we don't even know who all is in our country. We know this. We know that a lot of people on the terrorist watch list have been caught, but we know that we're not catching all of them. So logic would say that we literally have some terrorists walking around our cities. I want to ask if that's working, but we mentioned the book a couple of times, and I want to show people the website. So this is summit.org/Israel. This is what the web page looks like. I showed you the book cover. This is what the actual page looks like because I want you to be able to get the book to follow up on that. But when you're dealing, with these kids and their peers, many of them are, some of them maybe even, in the streets, but most of them are against Israel because of what they've been told. Are you seeing them actually take in the facts and start to change their minds? Is this working?
I think it is actually, and I have some evidence for it. But I want to affirm. I know a lot of people who are watching or listening to this right now are parents or grandparents. You have young people in your neighborhood. Unless you've specifically talked to them about this, you probably have absolutely no idea, and you will be floored by what they believe. My 27-year-old son told me, Papa, do you know that you're the only person I can talk to about all of this? Because I don't know a single person, he said, liberal or conservative, my age, who supports Israel. Not a single one. So yeah, we've got to do something. Well, what do you do? First of all, you have to recognize that this is sort of like a mind control cult. It uses behavior control, information control, thought control, emotional control in order to seal people's minds off from considering the truth. So you have to express caring concern. You have to recognize they are enslaved. Colossians 2:8, see to it that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deceit based on human tradition, based on the elements of the world rather than Christ. This is a generation that has been taken captive. When someone's taken captive, you realize they're enslaved. Well, if you treat an enslaved person differently than someone who's just being stupid, right? You have to you approach them in a different way. You have a little bit of compassion on them. Maybe they got themselves in that situation, sure, but you have a little bit of compassion. So what do? You begin to show them the facts. That's why I wrote this book and put 200 pieces of documentation in the book to support all of the things that are in it, because we've got to get the facts out there. The facts matter. Let me give you a quick illustration. Back at the end of March, we did a poll. This poll oversampled Gen Z. So we have clearer, more sure results about what Gen Z thinks about Israel than anybody else. You can go to the summit.org website. You can look at our media page. You'll see it there. But in that poll, we asked questions, and then people giving certain answers, we asked them follow-up questions. So here was one question. Does the fact that Israel has greater military power and wealth make its cause against Hamas unjust? 47% of young adults said yes. So we took those who said yes, and we asked a follow-up question. Does the fact that all Hamas leaders have become millionaires and billionaires by skimming international aid designated for destitute Gazans make their cause unjust? 57% said yes, and 23% said they are now not sure. So they were either cast into confusion or they changed their mind with the presentation of one fact. We asked another question, similar situation, about the two-state solution. Do you think Israel should be forced into a two-state solution, with Israel having its nation and Palestine being able to form its own nation? And the majority said yes. The young adults, they said yes, they should be forced into it. So those who said yes, we asked them, does the fact that the Palestinian leaders have refused to form their own nation 4 times, 1948, 1967, 2000, 2008, do you still think that Israel should be forced into it? And the support for Israel being forced into it dropped by over a third. So that's the lesson. If you know the facts and you can give young adults the facts, they change their mind. You know what they've been telling me, Randy? We're sick and tired of watching TikTok videos about this. We want to actually read a book. I can't tell you how many have said, yeah, give me the book. I want to actually read something about this.
Good.
That's a huge culture shift.
Yeah, no, and that's good, because it's, I hate these comparisons that always come up, but I'm going to make it anyway. I just finished The Nightmare Years by William Shirer, and you go, how could a population, become so Nazified, right? And it's through this over time indoctrination, the belief that they were rescuing people in these other nations from their oppressors as they went into Czechoslovakia and Poland and Belgium, and you go, it's astonishing to see people sort of eat out of one trough, and you're surprised when they grow along the lines intended. In other words, the people who believe that Hamas is a just cause, they've been fed such a line for so long now that it's astonishing that they could even believe that, but yet not astonishing because they've been fed the same line for so long. And so what you're talking about, going in and dropping these facts on them, which are facts, irrefutable, well documented. I hope that, you mentioned 1/3 changed their mind. I hope the other 2/3 went home and went, maybe I should rethink that, because it's a bad situation, and it can lead to, as we've seen multiple times in history, it can lead to really awful things, and I just don't want us to go there. So I appreciate the work you're doing. Anything you want to add before I let you go?
Well, I appreciate that. If you look at communist China, if you look at the USSR, if you look at Nazi Germany, it was a youth movement by and large. In Nazi Germany, in the very first year, the Hitler Youth grew from 50,000 members to 2 million.
Yeah, it was.
That's still a tiny percentage of the German population, but you don't need a majority. All you need is a minority that is strongly committed to something, and they can shift the entire nation. So we need to be paying attention to what's going on with Gen Z, and we need to love them enough and care enough for them to want them to come to a knowledge of the truth, especially on an issue that's of such critical importance for America's place in the world.
You know what else is interesting with the Hitler Youth is they went in and they took over the other youth organizations, like the Catholic organizations, and so they started eliminating the competition of thought in a sense. And man, Lord knows you're dealing with a bunch of kids that have come through a public education system that is eliminating opposition of thought, and that's just the path. It's a proven road if you want to indoctrinate a nation, and that is through the children. So, yeah, keep up the work.
That's right. That's right, man. They're 15% of the population, but they're 100% of the future. So, yeah, let's inform ourselves. Let's just get ourselves informed, and then let's see if we can figure out if we can help reach this rising generation. What do we have to lose? But we have a nation that we could keep if we manage to do it. So that's why I'm just telling everybody I meet, go to summit.org/Israel. Even I've talked to Palestinian, Gazan Muslims about this and given them the book, because they just don't know. They don't know the truth. Even people in the situation who this is their cultural background, this is all they've ever known, they especially don't know the reality behind what's going on. So it's our turn.
Yeah, and one more fact to throw in there, if you'll let me at the end. If the fighting would stop, in other words, if Hamas and the what's the PLO, I guess still, and the Houthis, if they would just quit, the Muslims would have more peace. Not just the Israelis, but the Muslims would have more peace. So it's a mess. All right. Thank you, Jeff. Good to see you. Appreciate the work you're doing.
Good to see you, Randy.
Keep
Thanks,
it up.
Man.
All you guys out there watching, go to summit.org/Israel, request your free book, educate yourself, get a few of them, pass them along, especially if you have a younger person in your life that is, hearing just one side. Well, maybe they'll open their eyes. Appreciate you guys. Hit that share button if you want someone to hear this. Hit like, follow, subscribe. You'll get more notifications of great interviews. I'll see you again next time here on Life Today Live.
Be true to what you said on paper.